The biggest mistake you can make in Ghost of Yotei is not petting all the foxes or playing some sick beats for your wolf friend, but I've got some real mistakes and general tips and tricks that I've learned across my 60 hours with the game so far. Let's go! We'll start with a couple of things that I touched on in my change the settings video, but I do think they're hugely important settings that technically would make a mistake. The first is when you're playing the coin game Zeni Hajiki. Now, initially, you will play a fair amount of this coin game if you want to get a fair amount of coin, but also each of the Gambling Den's coin games, if you beat them once and then beat them a second time, you'll get a unique charm for doing so, so they are definitely well worth doing. However, this game can be quite tricky if you're just relying on the visual feedback as well as the haptic feedback on the controllers. When you pull down the right trigger, you'll see Atsu's hand sort of like move as if, like depending on the pressure, but it's really hard to tell how much actual pressure you're putting on. It's very easy to overshoot it or undershoot it. The best thing you can do to make this process easier is jump into the accessibility settings and enable the Zeni Hachiki shot power display. This will then add an overlay so you can see exactly how much power you're putting into that coin flick, so you can really line up your shots, and it just makes that process so much easier. And because you always go first, it'll essentially mean you never lose. Oh! The same is true for the bamboo strikes. Personally, I really don't vibe with the bamboo strikes or just rapid button presses in general. I hate quick time events, and in the accessibility settings, you can enable rapid button press simplified. So when you do the bamboo strikes, this will remove the time limit for the actual button presses. You still need to press the buttons in the right sequence. You just don't have a time limit in order to press them, so you can take as long as you like. Really recommend to change this setting, as pressing those buttons super fast is just not something that I personally enjoy. But now that that's out of the way, let's talk about what you should do first. Now, every time you arrive at a new region, the very first thing you should do is find the person that gives you the weapon for that region. Each of the regions will not only have one of the Yotei 6 members for you to hunt down, but they will also have a weapons master that you can learn that region's specific weapon from. Highly recommend that in all the regions you go and do these first. And in some regards, like in the early stages of the game, when the first couple of Yotei 6 members are just all available to you at once, you could technically travel to all the different regions and just do this first. This is hugely important to do because it will make combat significantly easier, as all the weapons have like a rock, paper, scissors effect for the different weapons that all the enemies use. We'll cover that in detail a little bit later, but I do recommend that you do that style of content first. Next, I would recommend you do a lot of the mythic tails. These often grant some of the best gear in the game, plus charms, armor, etc. So when you do get those mythic tails from the storyteller or around, I would recommend to do them. If you're ever not sure about what the reward is, you can actually check on the map when you're looking at the various cards for all the different quests and like tasks that you can actually do. You can see what the rewards are from them. They're not entirely accurate though. For example, a lot of the dueling trees that are linked to the dueling the undefeated myth, you actually get a charm for doing those trees, but doesn't actually say so in the tales or the myths themselves. So just keep an eye on that, but for the most part, you'll actually be able to tell exactly what you can get just by looking at those charms. And if you're ever just trying to get some coin, like the easiest way to earn coin is by doing the bounties in the various regions. So I would recommend to do those early as well. Also, if you like what we do here, consider hitting that like button or subscribing, or the membership program. For just $1, you can get early access to videos like this and all of my other guides, build videos, and those cheeky long form essays we do. Plus, there are other benefits like members only channels in the Discord, merch, and more. So if you like what we do here, please consider hitting that join button or subscribing, as it helps me more than you know. But enough of that, back to the video. Atsu has a lot more choice over skills than Jin did, with each of the weapons having their own skill line, along with melee, survival, assassination, ranged, and even more than that. Now, you'll find techniques or skill points the same way you did in Tsushima that you do in Yotei via the Altar of Reflections. These will give you one technique point that you can then spend in the various skill lines. In the early to mid game, I highly recommend that you spend these skill points in the Onryo or the Revenge lines or the main Katana melee line, rather than spending these skill points in the various individual weapon lines that do unlock. Technique points can be few and far between, and unless you're specifically seeking them out, like you won't get a ton of them, which obviously do recommend specifically seek them out. But basically here, like you will get a lot more value from the skills or the techniques in the Onryo and Revenge line than you will for, say, earning like one specific skill for one specific weapon type that you won't use that often, right? Now, if you want some like early game ideas for skills, I would recommend to get Jump Kick pretty early, as it's a great stagger. All you need to do is jump and then press the heavy attack button. You can stagger enemies quite comfortably. Really really valuable to use until you have like the weapon combinations that then also do tons of stagger to specific weapon types that enemies are using. It's just an easy way to stagger them until you get that like trump card on the weapon type they're using. Safe fall is great from landing from heights, as you will jump off a lot of cliffs in this game, and it can just help alleviate that fall damage. And then Onryo's Will. This will allow you to revive yourself if you do get downed, which can happen very randomly. Like the damage, even on the normal difficulty, can spike quite high just with some enemies. And if you've got a lot of spirit, this will just immediately allow you to revive yourself in those encounters as well. So just a couple of options to pick up, but there are plenty of other great options. Like I just love the chain assassination. It's like my favorite skill in every game, to be honest. But not the only important thing about progression is these technique points. You've also got the wolf dens to upgrade your wolf, as well as the hot springs for HP, the bamboo strikes for spirit. Now, generally a tip that I'd recommend in each of the regions, once you have unlocked the relevant songs, is that you can use the shamisen to sing songs to help you locate hot springs, bamboo strikes, etc. This will instantly mark one on your map, and then you can just follow the wind in order to be able to get to one and actually unlock whatever it is that you're trying to find. The big mistake that I think you and most people will make is not utilizing outfits specifically all of the time. So you have 5 different outfit slots. Now, yes, you can make 5 different builds from them. A good example of this for me personally, I have an exploration outfit that uses exploration charms. I have a combat one that uses a lot of combat charms and defense charms, stealth one that has a lot of assassination charms, and then a ranged one that has a lot of the ranged specific charms. Now, using these is obviously the key here, but also switching between them whenever you need to, because you can change your outfit and your charms literally in the middle of combat as long as you're not in an active attack animation. So you could be starting a combat encounter in your stealth armor because you're trying to get these assassination buffs, or you get seen, switch to your combat, deal damage that way. Maybe someone's attacking you from range, you can immediately switch to your range kit, attack that enemy while you're in the middle of that combat encounter, then switch to your combat, etc., right? You see where I'm going with this. So the point is that if you really want to succeed, especially on some of the higher difficulties or lethal difficulty, leveraging outfits and the relevant charms in these outfit slots, very beneficial, and switching between them as often as you need to in combat encounters, as well as outside combat encounters, because there's a lot of benefits just having an exploration one that uses these exploration charms that can give you additional material, like the Bountiful Harvest charm. Now, speaking of charms, there is new charms in Ghost of Yotei that need to be upgraded. Now, these are the charms that you should really be focusing on and actually seeking out these upgrades. There's a lot of different examples of this. Like one is to climb Mount Yotei very early in the game, as this is available in the Yotei grasslands. By climbing to the top of the mountain, you'll get the Mother and the Father charms. Both of these are fantastic charms that can be upgraded. The one that I would highly recommend that you focus on is the charm of Mount Yotei specifically. Now, what this charm does initially is just lower the amount of damage that you take, but in order to upgrade it, you'll need to complete the reliquary puzzles that you'll find in all the different regions. There's about one in every single region. You'll find the very first one in the first region, the Yotei grasslands, about right in the middle of the map of that first region. Now, there's one of these in every region, and what I would recommend to do is seek these out, as every one you do, you will upgrade that charm, and that charm gains additional effects as you upgrade it. So initially at tier 2, it does just improve the amount of damage reduction that it had at tier 1, and then at tier 3, it also gives you a little bit of health back when you actually perfect parry, which you'll probably do quite a lot in Ghost of Yotei. But this is just an example of these sort of charms, and this is a minor charm that actually has this really beneficial effect. So I do recommend to seek these out, these unique charms that have these upgrades, and level them up just to see if they gain additional effects, but also just to improve their overall effectiveness, as these are the charms you should be focusing on in Yotei. All right, now I did mention we'll talk about the weapons, and we'll do that right here. So each of the different 5 weapons is effective against a certain type of enemy, and it is important that you know what they are as well as actually use them. Now, if you're ever unsure, like if you don't remember exactly what I'm about to say, you can always actually check this in your gear screen by clicking on the various weapon, and it'll tell you what it's actually effective against. But just to cover it here, the katana is effective against the katana. The yari, or the spear, is effective against the dual kami or the kusarigami, which is also a fantastic weapon because of this additional range. I've actually found the spear to be quite useful against other weapon types as well. The dual katana is effective against the spear, and the kusarigami is effective against the shield, and it also has a really fantastic AoE attack on its heavy, which is great for when you're surrounded by a lot of enemies, and the odachi is for brutes. Now, in combat, you'll be switching between these quite a lot, and getting that flow down as you're fighting various enemies is very beneficial. Now, if you are struggling struggling to focus on one or two specific enemies in just like the general combat flow, enabling target lock in your settings can help with that, as you can lock onto one specific enemy that's using a certain weapon type. You make sure you match that weapon type, and then it just makes that a little bit easier if you're just trying to target one specific enemy. However, you need to always be careful about the enemies around you, as everyone will attack you all at once in Ghost of Yotei. So you're sort of always dancing with a lot of enemies, but it might help you just focus on, say, one specific target. A mechanic that I ignored way too much in Ghost of Yotei in the early stages is camping, and I highly recommend that you camp often for a couple of reasons. Firstly, you don't really have to return to any of these specific vendors that you come across in the game, as you can actually invite almost all of them to your camp and then upgrade the various equipment just directly while you're there. But also, there's a couple of other reasons. So you can cook food at your camp, and this will give you a random major or minor buff depending on the option that you pick. Really beneficial when you're going into tough camps or bosses and playing in the higher difficulties. That buff is really nothing to sneeze at. You can always view it in your pause menu as well if it is actually active, to see exactly what it's doing. And also, you can use your last campsite as a fast travel point. So if you want to return to a specific location or area of the map that, say, there isn't actually anything near it that you can fast travel to, if you just place a camp down at that location, you can always return to it and fast travel back, as long as you don't move your camp, as it's only ever your last camp that will show up on the map that you can fast travel to. Upgrading your weapons and armor is hugely beneficial here, and your weapons will actually be upgraded at your forge back at your homestead, and your armor is upgraded via the specific armorer vendor, with one exception that I did talk about in my armor video, which I'll link here if you do want to go and watch that. But you should always be picking up all of the woods that you find in the world, because they're great for bow upgrades, metals to upgrade your armor and your swords, and cloth for your armor as well. And if you're ever struggling with a specific material type, you can actually buy these from certain vendors in the world, as well as some of the upgrade vendors as well. They'll sell you some of these resources, often either trading various materials for them, or in some cases just paying straight up gold to get them as well. So if you're struggling or you're short by a couple of materials, that's a way that you can get it up. And once you have unlocked it, I do recommend to check your gift altar regularly. There is a ton of great stuff that you'll get gifted at your gift altar, including cosmetic upgrades, charms as well, materials, coin, a few other things that I won't spoil, but there's plenty of things that you can actually get just from your gift altar. Interacting with it often when you do check it at various inns to see that there is gifts available, do recommend to do, as it will definitely give you a ton of good gear. A couple of combat tips to finish us off here. Now, the Yumi or the heavy bow is fantastic in combat. I actually prefer this over the short bow. The reload time, if you are setting up a range build, is really negligible, but it does pierce helmets and deal significantly more damage, so I do recommend it over the starter short bow that you get. The Scorch Bomb and just fire in general is really strong in Ghost of Yotei. Grass can actually be set on fire, and if you get a lot of enemies that are in grass, or just, in heavy grassland in general, you can set them and the grass on fire and just create a nice barbecue of the enemies. It really helps with a lot of the scenarios that contain a lot of enemies, and you can defeat them quite quickly. The quick fire tools are really overpowered, and you should be using these as often as you can. The very first one you get is like the smoke powder that you throw at enemies. You get this from like the first bounty in the game, Crow Genzo. When you do go to that first Yotei Shadows Inn, make sure you grab this bounty and then go and do that bounty, as you'll get this as the first one. The next one will take a little bit to get to, but having this straight away is just fantastic because it staggers enemies out of their attacks. It just gives you a couple of free hits, really beneficial in combat. And lastly, if you want more information about the best charms that you can get early in the game, I will link that video for you right here to go and watch next. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.